You're alive. But what does that really mean? Hey family, how are you doing? Have you ever stopped to think about the simplest yet most complicated question of all? What is it to be alive? I know it sounds like an 8 a.m. philosophy class, but stick with me because this is an amazing rabbit hole. Today we're going to dive down, like knowledge divers, through 5 levels of depth. I promise you that when we return to the surface, your idea of what separates a rock from you will have been shattered into 1,000 pieces. Ready for the journey? Okay, let's start with level 1, the surface, what we all learned in school. The first thing that comes to mind are the vital functions. You know, a living being moves, nourishes itself, grows, reproduces. It's like a checklist. If a kitten meets the requirements, check. It's alive. If a chair doesn't meet them, then it's not. It's the basis, the starting point we all share. Another key point of this idea of being alive is the ability to maintain balance. Think about this. You go outside in winter and your body, without you asking it to, starts to shiver to generate heat. Or you run to catch the bus and your heart speeds up to send more oxygen. This is called homeostasis. It's like your home's thermostat, but infinitely more complex and inside your body. It's the autopilot that constantly fights to keep you from falling apart. And of course, we can't talk about life without mentioning evolution. This is the most epic origin story ever told. Imagine life started as a single word in an immense book. Evolution is the author who, over billions of years, has been adding pages, chapters, and entire volumes, creating an incredibly diverse library of living beings from that single original word. It's why there are everything from bacteria to blue whales. And finally, at this basic level, there's the idea that all living things are made of cells. They're like the Lego bricks from which any living being is built. Some have a single piece, others, like us, billions. It's the fundamental component. But stop and think for a second. Why do we take it for granted that life has to be made of cells? What if it's just the only form we know? So there you have it. It moves, it balances, it evolves, and it's made of cells. This is level 1, the tip of the iceberg. It's the textbook definition, the one everyone accepts without batting an eye. It's useful, yes, but it's terribly incomplete. But if this is what we see on the surface, what secret engines move it underneath? It's time to put on our diving gear and plunge in. Welcome to level 2. Level 2, the hidden mechanisms. Remember we talked about living things nourishing themselves? Well, that's just the surface. What really happens inside is something called metabolism. Imagine your body as an incredibly controlled bonfire. Food is the firewood. Metabolism isn't just burning that wood for energy. It's a perfect chemical dance that converts it into heat, movement, and more of you. It's not magic, it's the most elegant chemistry in the universe. And this chemical dance is governed by an invisible and universal rule, the second law of thermodynamics, or entropy. Sounds complicated, right? It's not. Think of your room. If you do nothing, it tends to disorder, to chaos. That's entropy. The entire universe tends towards that disorder. But life is like that person who, in the middle of a chaotic music festival, starts building a perfect card castle. Life creates order out of chaos, and that's one of its rarest and most fascinating properties. Now, how is all this order organized? With an instruction manual, DNA, it's the software of life. But this software can activate a factory error in our brain, a cognitive bias. A bias is like a mental shortcut that sometimes deceives us. Since we have DNA as a reference, we look for life that resembles our own. It's confirmation bias. If we look for a red car, we'll only see red cars. What if there's life out there based on different software and we're unable to see it because it doesn't fit our template? Our idea of the origin of life also has its own mini-story. Decades ago, scientists Miller and Urey simulated early Earth conditions in a flask, water, lightning, gases, and surprise, amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, appeared. It was a shock. People began to think that creating life was almost like following a cooking recipe. Although today we know it's much more complex, that experiment forever changed the conversation, moving it from the realm of miracles to that of the laboratory. If you notice, all these hidden mechanisms, metabolism, the fight against chaos, DNA, are solving a fundamental problem: how to persist. How to continue existing in a universe that seems designed to disintegrate everything. Life is not just a state, it's an active struggle, an incredibly ingenious strategy to avoid disappearing. And the last key gear at this level is enzymes. They're like the hyperactive workers of the cell. They are proteins that make chemical reactions that would take centuries to occur, happen in a fraction of a second. Knowing this completely changes the picture. Life ceases to be a mysterious vital force, as they used to say, and becomes a chemical factory with an efficiency that the best companies in the world would envy. Closing level 2. Understanding these gears, this internal chemistry, gives us immense power. We no longer see life as something magical that simply is, but as a system that we can understand, study, and perhaps one day repair and even design. We cease to be mere spectators. But if you thought we had it all figured out, get ready, because this is where the story turns into true chaos. It's time to descend to level 3. Level 3, the chaos of reality. And the first big fight is about viruses. Are they alive? On one hand, they have genes and evolve at breakneck speed like the flu virus every year. On the other hand, they can't do anything on their own. They're like a USB drive with a file. They need to connect to a computer, a cell, to do something. They're biochemical pirates. Are they life or just very, very clever chemistry? Now let me tell you a secret. The idea of the spark of life, as in Frankenstein, is a myth. There's no magical moment when lightning strikes and boom, inert matter comes to life. And why do we love to believe in that myth? Because it gives us a sense of exceptionalism. It makes us feel that life is more than mere chemistry, that it has a sacred, special component. It's a much more comfortable story than one of a series of slow, boring chemical reactions. And this leads us to a brutal paradox. If we create a very strict definition of life, for example, it must have DNA and cells, we run the risk of encountering an incredible alien life form and not recognizing it, like an ancient explorer who sees a drone and doesn't know what it is. But if we make it very broad, a system that maintains itself and reproduces, then a forest fire or the formation of ice crystals could be considered alive. See the dilemma? There's no easy answer. And here's an uncomfortable question. Scientists are already creating the first forms of synthetic life in laboratories, organisms with computer-designed DNA. And almost everyone accepts it. But stop and think, is this really right? What happens if one of these creations escapes? What rights does it have? Are we playing God without having read the instruction manual? Even the debate about the origin of life has changed radically. Before, it was a question for philosophers and religious people. Today, it's trench warfare between chemists. Some advocate for an RNA world where a cousin of DNA did everything. Others say that life didn't begin in a warm pond on the surface, but in the depths of the ocean, in underwater volcanic vents. The question is the same, but the battlefield is completely different. All this chaos connects us to our own human condition. The fact that we don't know for certain how life began leaves us in a very strange place. It makes us feel, on one hand, incredibly special, an oasis of order in the cosmos, and on the other, terrifyingly accidental, a simple byproduct of planetary chemistry. And we have to live with that duality. In summary, Level 3 teaches us that the reality of what it means to be alive is a mess. It's messy, full of gray areas, fierce debates, and ethical questions that make our hair stand on end. There's no single clean answer, and that in itself is fascinating. All right, you've survived the chaos. You've seen that simple definitions don't work. Now it's time to see the details that separate the curious from the true connoisseurs. Welcome to Level 4. Level 4, Expert Knowledge. Here's something you won't find in a quick search. All fundamental molecules of life on Earth have chirality. What the heck is that? Imagine your hands. They are mirror images, but you can't superimpose them. They are chiral. Well, amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, can be left-handed or right-handed. And for some mysterious reason, all life on Earth exclusively uses the left-handed ones. Nobody knows why. It's as if only left-footed shoes were manufactured worldwide. Let's talk about entropy again, that tendency towards chaos we mentioned earlier, but with an even more powerful analogy. Imagine the universe as a giant casino. Entropy is the house rule. The house always wins, disorder always increases. Life is like an incredibly shrewd player who has found a poker table in a corner and is winning hand after hand, stacking chips, creating order. How does it do it? By cheating. For every chip it wins, it throws 3 onto the floor under the table, releasing heat and disorder into the environment. It seems to win, but the total disorder of the casino keeps increasing. Life doesn't violate the law, it exploits it. And in this world of experts, there are secret heroes. One of them is Lynn Margulis. In the 60s, she proposed an idea that sounded crazy, that our complex cells didn't evolve gradually. She said they were the result of an ancient war or alliance, where one bacterium ate another, but instead of digesting it, enslaved it to produce energy. Those enslaved bacteria are now our mitochondria, the powerhouses of cells. The scientific community laughed at her for years, until evidence proved her right. Her idea, endosymbiosis, is now a cornerstone of biology. And as in every good story, there's a rebel view. The dominant idea is that life began with genes, DNA or RNA. This is the genes first theory. But there's an alternative theory, metabolism first. Its proponents say that's thinking backward. They argue that self-sustaining cycles of chemical reactions had to exist first, like small chemical whirlpools that fed themselves. Life for them didn't start as a code, but as a fire that learned not to go out. Genes came much later to make that fire more stable. Now prepare for something that breaks logic. Research suggests that within enzymes, those molecular machines we talked about, quantum physics phenomena occur. Sometimes, for a reaction to happen, a particle like a proton needs to overcome an energy barrier. It's like having to throw a ball over a wall. But it has been observed that sometimes the particle simply appears on the other side of the wall without having the energy to jump over it. This is called tunneling effect. It's as if life uses the universe's weirdest tricks to function. And here comes the aha moment. What connects all this? Chirality, the fight against entropy, genes, metabolism. The key word could be information. Think about it. Life isn't just matter, it's matter organized by information. DNA is stored information. Metabolism is information in action. The fight against entropy is preserving that information from chaos. Perhaps being alive is fundamentally being a system capable of processing information to perpetuate itself. This completely redefines the question. Reaching this level of detail, level 4, isn't just about accumulating data and sounding smarter. It's about realizing that reality is much stranger, deeper, and more wonderful than it seems. It's about seeing the matrix hidden behind the world we take for granted. We have reached the limit of what is known. We have explored the chemistry, the debates, and the secrets. Do you dare to look beyond towards the final frontier where science meets imagination? It's time for level 5. Level 5, the final frontier. Let's speculate. What will life be like in 1,000 years? Forget green aliens. Think about digital life. Could an artificial intelligence that improves itself, replicates on the network, and learns from its environment be considered alive? Perhaps the future of life in the universe isn't biological, isn't carbon-based. Perhaps we are just the first draft, version 1.0. And this leads us to the deepest question of all, one for which we don't have the slightest idea of the answer. Is life a cosmic accident, a stroke of luck so improbable that it might be unique in the entire universe? Or is it an inevitable consequence of the laws of physics and chemistry, something that arises on any planet with the right conditions, like snow crystals form? The silence of the universe is to this day deafening. Now here's a mind-blowing idea. It's called the anthropic principle. It goes something like this. The universe seems to be perfectly tuned for life to exist. If the force of gravity were a tiny bit stronger or weaker, stars wouldn't form and we wouldn't be here. Why is it like this? The dizzying answer is, because if it weren't, there would be no one to ask the question. Our very existence acts as a filter that only allows us to observe a universe capable of creating us. We are here because we are here. Understanding what life is and how it originates is, arguably, the key to our future as a species. If we discover its fundamental principles, we might be able to search for it effectively on other worlds and finally answer the question of whether we are alone. Or, perhaps more importantly, we could learn to design life to solve our biggest problems. Bacteria that eat plastic, plants that clean the air super efficiently. The potential is unimaginable. And here's the last idea, the most provocative. What if alive and not alive aren't two separate boxes? What if it's a spectrum, a continuous scale? A rock is at 0, a virus at 2, a bacterium at 4, a dog at 8, a human perhaps at 9. Life wouldn't be a property that you either have or don't have, but a level of complexity and information processing that a system achieves. Alive is just a word we put to a segment of that immense scale. And with that idea, our 5-level descent has ended. We have traveled from the simplicity of the biology classroom to the confines of cosmic philosophy. It's time to return to the surface and contemplate the incredible panorama we have discovered. Remember how we started? With the simple idea that being alive was like a checklist, moving, growing, reproducing. Now look where we've come. To the possibility that life is a spectrum of information that fights against chaos, using quantum tricks, and perhaps doesn't even need a body. We've moved from a definition that made us masters of the concept to one that turns us into a small and amazing piece of a cosmic puzzle that we are just beginning to understand. Your vision of life, I hope, has been transformed. And now I ask you, from this crazy journey, what idea impacted you the most? The pirate viruses, the universe that seems designed for us, or life as a spectrum? I truly want to know what you think. Leave it in the comments. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for dedicating your time and curiosity to this journey. If you enjoyed blowing your mind with us, subscribe because we have many more fascinating abysses to explore together. See you next time.